Alright, once again, we're here for another review. This time I thought I would split the videos into two separate videos for G-Rex versus Supermassive and then G2 versus Infinity Esports. I'll be doing that one later. Anyways, for G-Rex and Supermassive, this one was hype. Or it was supposed to be hype coming into it. Not to say that it didn't pan out that way. I thought both teams played really well, and they played around vision really well. I think this is one of the few times in which you can say a wildcard team played well around vision. I was pretty impressed by it. I was impressed by the macro. There were some glaring mistakes within the games, but that's to be expected at this level. But it was just refreshing to see teams at least trying make attempts around vision. So let's pull up the image slides here of the draft. So breaking down this draft, I noticed that it seems like there's a priority for Xayah over on G-Rex, which is strange because normally it's a priority on Rakan, and then if you can get Xayah, that's cool. If not, you still have Rakan. So it's strange that G-Rex don't pick Rakan first. That's normally the first pick of the Lovers Duo. So that didn't make any sense to me. And the only explanation that I can think of is that Koala is not very comfortable on the Rakan pick. So Supermassive get Rakan, they get Kai'Sa as well too, and they kind of just get everything that they want. So going into the game, empty. What happens is there is a ward placed next to the Supermassive Wraith camp. And this keeps track of Stomage as he goes from red buff to Wraiths, and then they spot him at Wraiths, right, with red buff already. So they know he's probably going to path towards his blue buff. And then they see him path towards to invade. And so this is the game that they catch him invading for Raptors. That's where Gragas meets him because he notices that he's going towards bot side right after the Wraith camp. So he ends up pathing back, finds him at his Wraiths, stops him, and at least gets his big Wraith, and then goes from there. So this entire early game helps them determine where Stomage has been, and they just basically are able to keep track of him for the entirety of the early game, which is nice. And they even get a kill early against him and then along with avoiding the ganks entirely. And then it doesn't help that PK gets a solo kill against Fabulous in the top lane, which if you look at this top lane matchup, that's not supposed to happen, right? Like, yeah, I know that that with his brittle, he actually does a lot of damage as Ornn, but you still shouldn't be getting a solo kill. So gets a solo kill, and then G-Rex bot lane were just winning by themselves. They were just stopping the lane phase. So Supermassive, they start to play the objectives and vision better as they're able to take the mid-tier 1 and Rift Herald due to Candy not respecting the lack of vision in River, along with Supermassive having vision in enemy bot side jungle. And you'll notice this as a trend throughout this entire series, that bot side jungle vision is important to get vision on red side's jungle so that you can control and dictate what red side is going to try and do throughout the entire game. So it becomes very important for blue side to invade and get vision for the bottom portions of the map behind Dragon Pit, right? So 24 minutes in, Supermassive use their Rift Herald, right, to get tier 1, and then at tier 2, Snowflower engages onto, top tier 1 and tier 2, and then Snowflower engages onto Stitch and Koala, as they're the only ones there that are defending this tower. And then the rest of G-Rex comes along and they get wrecked too. And so Zeitnot gets a quadra kill. This is like at that moment. And then later on, he gets the pentakill in the bot lane after the game is already snowballed out of control after the first quadra, right? So this just shows the importance of, first of all, how Supermassive controlled the objectives within the game, and that they played objectives way, way, way better. And they also played around vision way better too. So they were able to control Dragon for the majority of the game, the entirety of the game, really. And they were able to control vision bot side. So that's what made them win this game. So it was really, really impressive. Damn, it's let's see, it's doing that thing again where it fucking doesn't let me change my hotkeys. Alright, do this real quick. Next slide, previous. Alright. Okay, so game 2. As you can see, Supermassive are allowed to get the Rakan, and they have a priority on Rakan, and yet G-Rex get Kai'Sa because they got wrecked last game from Kai'Sa, right? So they're just like, okay, whatever, we'll give you both Xayah and Rakan, but we're gonna take you off of Kai'Sa. And so they're just like, yeah, Kai'Sa was the big problem in that game. You know, he got the quadra, he got the penta, he looks really good on it. Let's take him off of that. And then you have the big question mark on Supermassive later on in the draft phase, which is the Ahri. Now, the Ahri is not that insane to think about because GBM has been known to play Ahri in the past. But he hadn't played it in the TCL for, I think, the entire season. But the important thing is he's running Glacial Augment. Now, I got super excited when I saw this because Glacial Augment is now becoming more and more of a thing on Ahri as she then goes into a supportive role instead. So what you end up doing is Glacial Augment, it'll proc super hardcore on the Twin Shadows or on the Hextech LP or whatever the hell the Icy Bolts are. And so it creates this huge slow zone. And that allows you to land your combo a lot easier, or your charm a lot easier as well too. And it just offers an insane amount of utility when it comes to Ahri's kit itself. And like I said, it helps you land the charm, which Ahri herself functions as it's all on the charm, because the charm allows you to do extra damage because it gives you, I think it's more percent magic damage when you land your charm. So this encourages Ahri players to land their charm in order to do any damage to an enemy champion, basically. So that's the theory behind this whole Glacial Augment thing. Rest of the draft, not really that interesting. You have Aatrox and Urgot facing off from each other, and a lot of people are complaining that Aatrox is now, or Urgot is too prevalent within the meta and it just needs to be banned. So to get in game specifics, G-Rex, they put Aatrox mid and then they put Ornn top. So this is really weird, but during the early game, Empty gets tracked, and this allows Supermassive to get early Ocean Drake. And then Stomage and GBM both gank top separately. So they get 2 kills on top, and Supermassive, they're just able to snowball top lane a ton. And they forget about their entire bot lane. And then a G-Rex later throw and push for too much at an inhibitor play on bot side, and this allows, Supermassive do this, and then this allows G-Rex to come back into the game and get Baron, and then just claw their way back through due to like a superior team composition, and it allows for Ornn to get his massive ults, because that's the entire way that their team comp functions, is that Ornn gets awesome ults, and then they're able to kind of play out the team fight after that. And also Ahri, through her supportive build, just kind of falls off later, and is not able to provide adequate amount of damage. So Supermassive, they're on a timer. It's not a very strict timer either with this team comp, because you have the Nocturne who's going to fall off, and then you have Ahri who's going to fall off too, but they get super far ahead in the beginning anyway, so they should have been able to close out this game. This was entirely their fault, and it's just misplay and greed for that bot lane inhibitor, and that's what really destroyed them. So that was their game to lose entirely. So for the next game, third game, so the draft, this draft is kind of strange because, well, first, it's not strange that G-Rex ban Rakan, because once again, they don't want to deal with Rakan. They've shown that they can't even play Rakan, so they would rather not give that up to Supermassive, where Snowflower looks actually insanely good on that pick. So aside from that, G-Rex get Kai'Sa first pick, and then of course Supermassive, they had to ban both the Urgot and the Aatrox because they don't want to deal with that on blue side. So Akali is able to get through the entire draft phase, and then last picked, which is still insane, but when you look at the team composition of G-Rex, you have to ask yourself, do I really want Akali at this point in the entire draft phase? Because they have an insanely tanky front line in Zac and Cho'Gath, and then also Aurelia is a bruiser, so she's quasi-tanky, right? So you should probably just not get Akali in this draft pick. I know it's an OP champion, and it feels bad to just not really play it, but if you get outscaled, or if the game extends even slightly past mid-game, then you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to close this game out, regardless if you snowballed or not. And you would have to snowball really hard in order to just get to this mid-game status on your team while the enemy team is still in early game power phase. And then it also doesn't help that you have a Lucian that doesn't function well in the late game either, so you are seriously banking on the early game. And then you have the Ornn, which, I mean, Ornn's great late game, Ornn's great mid game, and even early game kind of too, but you're hemorrhaging your bets a little bit in that sense too, especially with the Gragas. So I don't know, I don't really like the Supermassive draft coming from this. And then as we see in game, Supermassive, they get a mid lane advantage through GBM having pressure in the matchup, and the broadcast had said that Akali is particularly well against a melee enemy because she could just do her shroud and then throw shurikens at you, or kunai, I guess it is, and constantly harass you, and you don't really have a way to trade against her. And the only proper way to trade against an Akali is usually through a range matchup, or through utility control and wave control in mid lane. So, GBM has pressure mid lane, and then it's really crucial that at 6 minutes the wave is sitting in such a good position to where the casters are now pushing the wave towards the side of GBM, and Snowflower just roams over to mid lane to stop Empty from helping fast push that wave and crash it into the tower, so that Candy can actually farm and have the wave push towards him and not get dominated by this Akali. So GBM ends up getting like something like a 30 CS, around 30 CS lead during this time. So he's really, really, really far ahead. And Stomage is able to invade off of GBM's pressure mid lane. But the big problem in this entire game is that Supermassive's bot lane falls apart. And they're dying to like a 2v2, and G-Rex are able to somewhat crawl back into the game through them. And GBM dictates the pace of the early game, but Supermassive aren't able to get any picks in mid game, allowing for G-Rex to scale and eventually win through superior late game draft tank compositions and just higher DPS from late game Kai'Sa. So this game is just really awful because they couldn't snowball fast enough, and they weren't willing to actually pull the trigger and try and get picks and just try and get through that phase itself too. So it's super bad, and they just didn't capitalize on how their team comp functions, and it seems as though a lot of teams are falling into this trap of choosing Lucian. And it's like, if you're going to choose a Lucian as a bot laner against Kai'Sa, then you need to be able to snowball that matchup and get Lucian to get into the mid game at a relatively fast pace, because otherwise he's going to fall behind, and Kai'Sa is going to be able to take over towards the later parts of the mid game, and then of course into late game. So yeah, I didn't like the draft from Supermassive, and I definitely didn't like the execution. Execution probably being more of a problem than the draft itself this game, considering that they actually did get ahead. They got the Akali very, very far ahead, and then Stomage was able to take control of the jungle. But like I said, vision control, mid-game control, they didn't play around objectives that well. And that's weird considering game 1 they did. So, final game, game 4. So, that same pixel bush near dragon is warded again. And this is a reoccurring theme throughout the entire series, the best of series. And if you look at it, it's that blue side is able to track whoever is on red side, whether it be G-Rex or Supermassive, whatever. That pixel bush is usually always warded, especially by blue side. Now, okay, I skipped draft, so I guess we'll go back to draft. Supermassive, they get Rakan, which is great, and they're able to get Olaf as well too. So this is pretty awesome draft so far. And with the Lucian, like I said, teams seem to keep wanting to get Lucian, and then if you get Lucian into the Xayah, then it's just saying, okay, well, now I'm just going to try and 2v2 you better than you can 2v2 us, although you have a Rakan, which can't really 2v2 that well against the Morgana because of the spell shield. So I don't really see a reason to pick the Lucian here. I don't think it's a very good pick, just because of the Morgana more specifically, right? If Morgana wasn't there, then yeah, sure. But she is. And you also pick it in the third pick of draft phase. So you already see the Morgana is there. So I don't know why you're picking Lucian. So that's my only real criticism for this. The rest of the draft is fine. I don't think there's any big problems with it. So that pixel bush I was talking about is warded again next to Dragon, right? And so Supermassive know this, but G-Rex don't. So Stomage is able to get a read on the gank mid when Empty tries to go for a behind gank, next to the Wraith bush or the Wraith camp of Supermassive. And so Olaf is sitting on the other side over here and reads it, immediately stops it. So good play by Supermassive themselves to have that pixel bush warded, because it seems a trend that the enemy red side ends up going that way, in that direction, to try and get Scuttle Crab and then to see what's going on for bot side jungle, because both these teams have been focusing bot side jungle vision control. So there's a TP play, and this is the play which puts Supermassive in a big hole, because at 2:15 or at 12:15 is where it entirely goes wrong for them, along with them just not respecting a lane swap later. So 2:15 or 12:15, Supermassive, they try and get a dive bot lane, but G-Rex are already there to counter it, because Nocturne was pathing towards bot side jungle anyways. So he's there to counter it, and G-Rex get a 2-for-0 as Supermassive stayed around too long trying to get the bot tier 1 turret. And this allows PK, the top laner, the Ornn, to teleport behind them and then get this flank. So G-Rex, they're able to get bot tier 1. And so, it kind of flips the situation. It's like, okay, well, we're just going to counter gank you, and then we're going to take your bot tier 1. And so that happens, but then at 14:40, as, the play had already subsided and whatever, and teams go back to their respective lanes, of course G-Rex are going to lane swap, right? Like, that's what you do when you take a bot tier 1 turret, is you end up lane swapping. So both teams end up lane swapping, and then what's funny is that Supermassive push top lane with their bot 2v2, and yet they should have known that Empty would be there topside due to the previous play where he reacted to the gank attempt from inside his bot jungle. And not only that, but he didn't use his ult. So that he still has ult. So G-Rex, they're able to get the 1-for-0 topside, and this just totally staunches Supermassive's attempt at all to try and crack top tier 1. And then so later on, this game is just thrown by Supermassive's inability to let a play go, sacrifice the bot lane play that they had for the TP and just give it up. And basically get wrecked the entire game after this. And so at like 1810, Supermassive dive GBM in the mid lane, in between his tier 1 and his tier 2 with the Nocturnal, and then Supermassive try and save him by collapsing, but then they just end up giving over more kills, and G-Rex get like a 3 for 0 and mid tier 1. So at this point, the game is basically over. G-Rex are super far ahead, too far ahead for Supermassive to come back unless they mess up really hard, which they particularly don't. They kind of went super aggressive when they ended up getting Baron buff later in the game and pushing the bot inhibitor turret. They ended up like diving, kind of, and they got a kill, but more importantly, they dived again, and their tank ended up taking too much damage. So they had to back off from the play, and that's when also the Rise in the top lane had to back off from trying to take top lane inhibitor, which he could have, I think, if G-Rex were more healthy on the bot side of the map, because they had to pull back. So other than that, yeah, that's really it for this series. The entire series was about bot side vision control, and whoever is on blue side should expect vision in their own bot side jungle. And it was just about controlling that entire bot lane. And then, of course, you had PK getting the solo kill in the first game, which shouldn't have happened. And you had Supermassive not able to close out when they got the Akali pick snowballing. And then also when they got ahead with the Ahri pick as well too, they weren't able to close out fast enough. So this was just a entire game of mistakes, I think, from Supermassive. And I'm not trying to take anything away from G-Rex to say that this team isn't good. I think that they are very good, and they're able to keep this mental resilience about them, which is very important too. And that's even more important when you consider a best of series. So that's better for them if they're able to escape their group. Maybe they might be able to, because Group D, if they can upset Fnatic, and then maybe 100 Thieves can upset Fnatic as well too, then they might still have a chance. I'm not sure. And of course, no one's fucking with IG, but that's all I have. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys for the next Plan Knockout review, which is G2 versus Infinity Sports. Peace.